Okay, Mugash.
Yo.
Let me ask you, in terms of all over, did you ever make revenue from that? And then from that, explain to us your transition now from, I think, is it USIU all over into the next phase of your life?
Are you talking about personal? Earning money personally?
Yeah, I mean, so like you guys were famous. You were gigging all over the place.
The group was earning revenue, yes. But we didn't get paid ever.
So what was that money?
And that's not, I say that in 2019 and it sounds like the most crazy thing ever. But if we go back to, this was around 2002, 2003, 2003. It wasn't strange that people who were involved in Christian ministry weren't getting paid for it. And we weren't paid because we considered it ministry. So the money or the revenue that was coming in, that Olova was receiving, didn't go into payment of the members unless the dancers were, if a group, unless Olova also operated as an agency, as a dance agency. So if they were approached and told, yeah, we need dancers for this one, this and this thing, we need 3 dancers. The 3 dancers would be selected, then they'd get paid and Olova would get agency fee off of that.
Okay.
That's how some people are able to make personal money from it. But when we were commissioned as a group, for instance, if we were doing a Beats of the Season type gig, where we were being commissioned as a group, not as individual dancers, then in that case, the money would go back into the ministry. And then it would go into, we were trying to get apparel off the ground, all over apparel, that didn't go very far. Transportation to events, that sort of thing, managing a little office. That's where the money went into. But
did you trust the accountability system? Or at that time you were not even about to ask?
Are we going there? Yes, I did.
You did?
I did because the accountant, you remember, like I said, it was a small group of us as we were trying to get this off the ground as a sort of
I mean, I'm just asking company. That because that's what everybody's facing.
No, it's true. It's true. And it's a good question. Yeah. So as far as I know, dude, yes, everything was above board. As to whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know. I think I'm pretty right, but I don't remember money being siphoned or, if it was ever being cooled, it was cooled by one person, but I don't know if that happened.
So for example, Beats of the Season.
Yes.
Did you know how much was being paid?
No.
Or you didn't? Okay.
We knew we'd get paid, we'd show up, we'd be given transportation there.
Food if you needed.
Back. Yeah, food and that kind of stuff, yeah. Oh, what did you say?
So you wouldn't know if there's a fee that Olova was being paid for performance. You wouldn't know what that figure was.
We didn't know what that figure was, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we wouldn't know where the money would go. So that would sound quite naive by these standards now. But we're operating in a very different ministry itself was an extension of church ministry, where you showed up to church, you did your ushering, you did your praise and worship or whatever, and you didn't expect that you're going to get paid from that because you're doing the work of the Lord. Even if the church was making quite a bit of money, and even if pastors, it was really just the pastors who were, the pastors and the lay staff, that's what they were called. The non-pastoral staff, they're the ones that would get paid. But Olova operated pretty much like a church would, that the money goes into.
I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, and I'm not trying to bring up old wounds or start wounds. I get. I'm just trying to understand it from, okay, fine, Olova is a dance group and it's all nice, but then again, remember, no, you have no church affiliation, or everybody's in different churches, but you come together as this unit. So it's nice and dandy when you're doing the ministry in the beginning, where you're going to different schools and there's a transportation and all of these things. Even if that transportation fee is coming from one person, forking it out so that you guys can travel. But when corporate money starts coming in, when Olova as a group is being called for events, and that those events, there's an element of payment happening, that's now where sometimes the cookie begins to crumble. And I'm saying this just so that people who are entering ministry right now have to draw a line between where ministry becomes business.
That's true.
You get?
And no, that line didn't exist until a few brave souls started talking about, this is the work. There needs to be some remuneration for the work. And we really didn't think on that level. As far as I know, Richie, even Oscar, our leader, didn't pay himself. Yeah. So this money would go right into the ministry, and none of that ministry money was considered salo money. So we knew, all of us knew, all of us is going to get to that point where it's earning enough and it has enough assets to actually pay its people full time. But they would need to be doing more than just dancing at that point.
Okay.
And the dancing would have to take more of a business aspect than a ministry aspect. So even when we were going and performing for corporate gigs, we were just ministers who were lucky enough to be doing a corporate gig. We didn't go with the entitlement of, hey, listen, I did this gig, you guys made this money, where's my money?
Yeah.
And that's how it was. I know it sounds so strange today, but back then it was the most normal thing ever.
I think I was in the transition of the two as a musician.
You guys were the new school.
So
you
for
guys
example,
were starting
when
something.
I started, I was under K Crew.
Yeah.
And going anywhere under K Crew, the expenses of our transportation were under Mo's. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But when Mo's did TSO, totally sold out, and you're charging entrance fee, as A-star, you're going to pay me my monies. You get what I mean? And it hit a point where I was like, listen, I can't do the ministry because I need to eat. So therefore, that's what led and it wasn't an angry breakup. It was just like, I need to make money from my music, and thank you for your platform where I'm able to sell my CDs and penetrate. But now I want to do it as a unit. So that's where now hip hop came. So that's why I'm saying I was in the transition of the two, where I've done the ministry, and the ministry is wonderful. I've done it and it's whatever. But then why I'm bringing this conversation up is so that you can, as anybody listening to this, maybe who's in dance ministry, serving in church, draw the line between ministry and business.
True. And I think even at its very, just on a basic human level, if someone is out there dedicating time and effort to you, and you are deriving something from that, to make a separation between, let the church earn its money and whatever, and then you be blessed and go with the Lord, I think that time has passed. I think there still needs to be an element of remuneration or recognition within ministry, because the word ministry has been misused so much. You have people giving so much of themselves and then ending up disgruntled in the end, and they realize it didn't really add up too much.
Yeah, I think there's also a place. Now, on the flip side, I do agree there's a place for ministry, because ministry enables you to sharpen your gifting in an environment. It's like an internship of sort. Gives you resources that you probably would not have before had, but to help the church achieve a certain vision.
It's true. That's also true.
But then there hits a point where now you have to decide, my ministry has hit has hit maybe a place. Anyway, so let's now go into then what led to your transition.
Oh,
have I asked another hard question?
You have.
Again, I'll say I need to ask the hard questions as well, not for the slander, the sleaze, and all of those things, but just for the real life experiences. Your stories are so nice and they sound dandy, like you never suffer and you've never had lows. You're just winning Mr. USIU. You're just doing amazing things. But explain.
Okay. I can't tell that story without telling you about the day we heard that Isa passed on.
Oh, okay.
I think everyone can remember where they were when it happened, when you heard the news. If Isa's music meant something to you, if he touched you in any way, like if he touched your soul with his music, and he did that for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, tens, hundreds of thousands of people, his music was special. His music is still special. I don't understand how it ages. I can't even see Isa's music ages well. It doesn't age at all. Man. How even with our finest hip hop talent, with all the support it's receiving, with all the fandom it's receiving, you still can't come close to what Isa succeeded in doing. So anyway, on a random Sunday, so like I said, we're formalizing a lot within Olova. We're going on to our next level. We're trying to figure out, how can we make a business out of this? How can we make working in all over more sustainable, and how can we make it something of an entertainment business? Because yes, we're here for the ministry, but we're also here to clean up entertainment, which you might identify with quite a bit. So our tagline, our company tagline was redefining entertainment. You know, we had a logo, we had a few corporate sponsorships for some of the events we were doing by this point, but we really wanted to formalize everything and set the base for what was going to become a thriving entertainment business. So in one of our numerous meetings, and I really did not enjoy those meetings at all, I had an Ericsson T10 or T28 or something, and it had battery problems. And so my sister had been trying to reach me on the phone over and over again, and she couldn't reach me. So she calls Oscar, and Oscar does an uncharacteristic thing. He picks up his phone during a meeting, which he didn't used to do, but I guess she tried calling him so many times. So he picks up his phone and then gives it to me, and I'm like, what's going on? This is weird, this is strange. And when he gives it to me, he's like, I think this is for you. I think it's your sister. And I'm like, okay. So I pick up the phone and I'm like, what's up? And immediately I can tell she's in distress. Her voice is shaky. I can tell she's been crying, and I'm like, what's going on, man? And she's like, Mugambi, is your phone working? And I'm like, well, it's died and I need to charge the battery. Well, what's up? And she says, I need you to talk to Isa's mom. I need someone. No, Wahoo needs to talk to someone older than me and Yvonne. And I'm like, what? So I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, okay. Akina Isa had a gig in Nakuru yesterday. They were coming back, and we hear there's been an accident. We've heard that Nameless has been injured, but he's alive. But every time we ask about Isa, Wahoo doesn't want to say. She's insisting on talking to mom. We can't reach mom because mom is at a crusade. So maybe Wahoo can talk to you, because us, we need to know what's happening. So she didn't want to talk to Yvonne. She didn't want to talk to me. Maybe because you're a little bit older than us, and I was like 2 years older. Like, I'm 2 years older than them, so it's not that much. 2-3 years older. So I'm like, yo, are you like? So she hasn't told you anything. No, she hasn't told me anything. So I was like, just hang tight. Let me come home, and then we can deal with it from there. So again, I'm driving my Fox car, and I jump into the car and I drive to South Sea from from Gong Road.
So you tell these guys there's an emergency, I need to leave.
Yeah. I was like, yo, guys, and I told them what I know. I've heard there's been an accident. Isa's probably been in it. Isa's been in an accident, but no one wants to see what's happened. Her Nameless is injured. We don't know. So of course, we've been doing all this work. We know these guys. And I'm like, excuse me, I need to leave. I leave and I get to Halai. And there's a bunch of people stood outside Isa's house. And by this point, it was so strange, so poetic. A lot of the people he was bigging up in the songs that we came to love were there. And it was still a small crowd of people, and we still didn't know what was going on. There's no official word about what has happened to Isa. All we know is that Wahoo didn't want to tell anyone. So they're obviously trying to keep this circle of information very small. Mm-hmm. So I go there, my sister is hysterical. Yvonne, by this point, her and Isa had been dating. A broken, crying. The younger brother is there, Habib. His younger sister is there as well. Was it elder sister? I can't remember. And all of them are trying to reach mom, and they can't. And no one wants to say anything about what's happening in Nakuru. So obviously they were very, very worried. And we were just hoping that when that call comes in, it's going to be good news. Yeah. That, maybe he had some injury, he's stable, whatever, he's been whatever. Like, why they were just desperately trying to just find some information. So, of course, Wahoo is not going to talk to me. Who's this guy? And, desperately, my sister Ivana, like, he's older than us, we just need you to tell someone. And she's like, find the mom, I'll tell what's going on. So we're sitting there. and mom can't be reached. Even if you go to the crusade, how are we going to look for her through crowds of hundreds or thousands of people? So we're just sitting tight there.
So who's mom?
Isa's mom.
Oh,
Isa's mom.
good.
Oh, this whole time I'm talking about mom, it's Isa's mom.
Yeah.
So
Isa's mom was a Christian. Is a Christian.
Oh, very much. Staunch. Oh, staunch Christian.
And her son was Muslim.
Yes.
Oh.
Because they grew up in a Muslim home, she had formally married to a Muslim man. So as far as we knew, Isa was Christian, was identified as a Muslim, but hanging out with him, I'll tell you one of the most refreshing things about hanging out with Isa. Up until this point, I thought we knew as Christians how to act Christian. But yet here I am hanging out with one of the biggest acts in the country right now. And he had such a grace and a gentleness and a kindness to himself. Always looked out for people, always tried to do the right thing, was completely in love with his family, his mom and his siblings. And just, he just had this genuine care for people and for his craft. That's what you always felt when you met Isa. And he had this warm aura, like this warm, welcoming energy. It was beautiful. And I was like, I don't think I know how to do this Christianing thing correct, this ministering thing. We've gotten so caught up in all the performance of it that we've actually forgotten how to exude this sort of spirit. Because he makes me feel more comfortable than 100 people that I hang out with in the church. And we knew that he loved God. We knew that if you listen to some of his lyrics, he'd always acknowledge a lot of that stuff. So, I was caught in this existential, identifies as Muslim, and here we are talking about one true God and heaven and hell and all this stuff. And I'm like, this shit can't be real. It's not right. It doesn't feel right to me. I think, many thoughts like those were running through my head as we were just waiting for news. What happens now? And all of us were just trying to calm each other down. All of us were just trying to be as positive as possible. And as we got there and we were just waiting for the mom to be reached, nothing. And an hour passes, and it's the longest hour ever, and then an hour and a half passes, and it's just the longest, and this is just dreary, it's tiring, we're getting exhausted. So an uncle shows up, and I don't know how he'd been reached, but he was the mom's brother or mom's first cousin. And so he's the next best thing to mom at this point. And finally, we're given a number to call. And he keeps trying to call this number, and cellular network was still not what it's like today. And Safaricom, if you remember at that point, was a pretty unreliable network if you're calling certain areas. And this part of Nakuru, the call kept dropping. It would drop. He was trying to reach. It would drop. So every time. So there was a bunch of us, like I said. There were some people inside the house, some people outside the house, who were just scattered around, just waiting. And I remember every time the call would drop, he'd go, and it was frustrating. And the call would drop, and then he'd try again, and then the call would drop. And so we were watching him do this about 3 or 4 times, my sister and I. Yvonne was inside, his sister was inside, his sister Mariam, Habib was inside. Safo, Thome, Big Pin, K-Rapt, a lot of us we were just scattered around. And I was there watching these guys, and I'm like, I'm not really part of this circle, but these guys are hurting. It's unnerving, it's painful to just watch people in this state of uncertainty for so long.
Yeah, it's torture.
Yeah, it is. We're just waiting for something. And at this point, as the hours flowed on, it's just getting scarier and scarier, and we're just hoping everything is fine. Anyway, so the uncle is standing about 3 or 4 feet away from us, and he does the same thing again. He drops his arm and goes, that's what he does. And then I just asked him, hey, has the call dropped again? And this time he was silent. And he looks up and he says, he didn't make it. Something strange happened at that point because there was this rush of a strange energy, like a wave. It's almost like the guys in the house heard what he said, because suddenly they start pouring out. So the guys who are standing up a bit of a corner away see my sister reacting, because my sister now just bursts into tears. And she's like, what? And she just bursts into tears. And I think Yvonne and them heard from inside, and they come out running and they see crying has started. People start, and everyone is just weeping. And I'm just watching everything like, what is going on? And this was at about probably 5:30. And so now everyone is holding on to each other, and we're just, everyone is just dealing with this shock, and there's a lot of crying, and there's a lot of, and the thing about this moment is that we couldn't last in it. We couldn't last in it for too long, because suddenly now, after this conversation was had, okay, the people in Nairobi know what's happening. Nights out. The people need to know. The people in Nairobi know. He is going to tell the mom. So I cannot imagine what it was like for Issa's mom. For her phone to come on, for her phone to be put on, and she puts on the phone at the end of the
crusade.
And immediately she turns it on.
Messages.
Texts are coming. Where are you? What's going on? And she, unfortunately, was among the last to receive the news.
And probably by text.
Probably. I really hope not. I don't know. I never have asked her that question. I don't know. So she comes home, and Issa's mom is like she's like if you think about what the epitome of a Bible-believing matriarch is, she's strong and solid, and she's very small-framed, but even her energy is those ones of reassuredness, and when she came, she wasn't crying. She was like, you could see there was shock, but she's having to deal with other people's shock, and she went into mother mode, and she's going around hugging everyone. And we're the ones telling her sorry, and she says this is God's plan and whatever, and all of this is just crazy. So by the time mom comes, all of us have been standing around and crying for a bit, and we're doing this thing where if someone gets overwhelmed, take them into the house, or if it was someone who lived in the house, take them back home. So at one point, I have to take my sister home. We're practically almost carrying her. Then we have to take Yvonne home. They have to catch their breath and come back so we know what the next step is. And it was just this linear of support. And then this influx of people, musicians and radio presenters and TV presenters and just all these famous people just start trooping in. Oh, there's that radio presenter from Capital FM. There's that, and everyone is just weeping. And still, we know that the body hasn't arrived yet. So one conversation that now started happening was, Issa had once told Habib, and Habib just said this, he blurted it out, and he said, Issa had once said that if he ever died, he'd want to be buried as a Muslim, because that was a question. And immediately that was said, now the Muslim side of the family now showed up. And they showed up in numbers. And I didn't know there was such a huge side on his dad's family. So his dad shows up, and suddenly there's a fundraising being held, and Big Ted is there and he's facilitating all this stuff, and everything is just moving too fast. And before we're mourning, like before we even had the chance to mourn, suddenly money is being raised, and talk to someone at Karioko Cemetery, and yes, that has been secured, and this is what we need, and the Muslim rights say this, that, and the other. And in the midst of all that confusion, and everyone is still trying to come to terms with their feelings, suddenly there is a few hundred people standing outside the house. The news had spread so quickly, so people were pouring out of their houses because they knew Issa this is where he lived. A lot of people who knew him personally, like I remember K-Rapt, man, like K-Rapt was broken, man, and he was openly weeping and, torments forward, trying to be as strong as possible because, you know, they had to be strong for so many people, and there was just tears everywhere. And all of us are wondering, like, what the hell is happening? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? So as if to tell us, you know, this is real, was standing there. Oh, by this point, I had called back to the meeting and said, yo, guys, I just received word that Isa has passed on. And then I went back to the meeting and picked up a few guys because they wanted to come and show their support as well. And then now there's me and a few members of Olova and the family and everyone. And there's many of us now. And nightfall has come, the sun has set. And then the ambulance that was carrying his body showed up. And it drove, it had its lights on, no siren, just the lights. And from, they lived, you know, highest, it's a long, you know, 2 long roads leading up to, with houses on either side leading up to like a T. And then we saw the lights from there, slowly. And I don't think there's anyone in the estate now who doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it just came silent and slowly with the lights, the lights. And as it came and parked, everyone became, we just got quieter and quieter. So that by the time it parked and they opened the back and they removed this body covered in cloth and carried it into the house, you could have had a pin drop. There was hundreds of us standing around. We just parted way and you could have had a pin drop. Silence, complete silence. Because here we were like, it's real. And a semblance of that silence remained for about a half hour, 45 minutes, because now the process of cleaning the body began. And like I said, guys showed up, like it was like a boom, like clockwork. The body was cleaned and then it was time for viewing. And remember how I said that there was a lot of silence. It was pretty much silence. And, you know, people were talking in murmurs, and these poor people, anyone that was really close to Isa had to now withstand calls because it had broken on the news now.
Yep.
7 p.m. bulletin had happened. And the 7 p.m. bulletin was when it was first announced that Isa Mari has been in an accident and has been killed. And Yvonne's phone blows up. And I was feeling so sorry for her because every single time that phone rang, she'd pick up and she'd be pretty calm. And then she'd burst into tears because she has to tell them, yes, I had, yes, I'm sad. And oh my God. And she had to receive dozens of this call over and over. And we didn't have etiquette. You picked up the call when you came. You know, you didn't know how to. We picked up calls. That's what you did. Yep. And everyone is having to contend with all this, and there's more people showing up, and it's overwhelming for everyone. And in the midst of all this silence, we had, yes, they finished, and the people who came to clean the body, you know, came out and left, and it was time for the viewing. And the first thing we had, the thing that broke the silence, was like the screams of a mother on whom it has finally, it's dawned on them that my son has died. Oh, man. And her Swahili was pristine. I think it was a family thing. Her Swahili was pristine. And suddenly she went from this calm person. By this point, I remember I'd taken my sister home, and my mom comes out of her room and she's like, what's going on? And we're like, we just had Isa has died. And my mom now is also distraught, and then we walk back up with her and she goes and comforts. And all the moms, this is how you know Isa was there. A lot of the moms in the Esto came out and now sat with Isa's mom. So as much as there was a community of people on the dad's side who are now in like, we need to do this the correct way, there was also a lot of emotional support for this other side of the family. And we are the people, like, we never met Isa's dad by this point. We didn't know about that side of the family. So we're watching everything happen, and we're all like, you know, trying to just hold on and be strong. And there was a whole circle of people, you know, and Isa's mom was still being the strong one until that moment. And so we hear the wails, and she's taken up to her room because we could hear her voice literally going up the stairs and disappearing and fading. And someone went with her to comfort her. And then they opened the house, and I can't imagine what it was like for her. This is your house, this is your home. And suddenly there's all these people walking into a room because it'd been laid out, and all these people walked in, gave their respects, and walked out. And there was a bit of a hierarchy, a bit of a system. A lot of the people close, were furthest at the front of the line. And we walked in, and there he was. And he walked out because it has to keep moving. And a fundraising book was opened, and people were fundraising all this money. And Lucas shows up, and the whole Gopa's table shows up, and everyone is wondering, what do we do, how do we get involved? And there's all these conversations, frantic conversations, because all of us felt we need to do something. This whole thing went on until probably way after midnight. There was people there all through, and people just kept streaming in, some people leaving, but people just streaming in, all the way into the next day. I had to go to school the next day. But people were still streaming in. And this is where the circle widened. It went from one radio presenter telling another radio presenter, telling another event organizer, telling someone. And people are coming from out of town to pay their respects as well. And by the evening of the next day, Issa had been buried. His album hadn't come out yet. I couldn't be there for the funeral personally because I had to be in school. And by the time I got there, I met the women now in Issa's life going to pay their respects, not to a body but to a grave.
وعفو عنه وأكرم نزله ووسع مدخله وغسله بالماء الثلج والبرد ونقمشي kucheza kuku dansa uchakacha ndio matokeo.
Issa alikuwa ni mtu mzuri sana na mtu anamcha Mungu sana. Familia yetu imekuwa ikipenda Mungu, kwa hivyo kweli nimepotelewa. Potelewa na kitu kikubwa. Lakini nimebaki na Habibu, maana sina mtoto mwingine wa kiume, sasa ni Habibu.
Issa was a wonderful person. He wanted me to follow in his steps. He always advised me. Even before he went, he was still telling me, like, if I'm to go today, I'm the one who will take care of everything in the house. So his last wish was that I should go on with my studies and take his music somewhere.
22-year-old Issa was a highly talented young man who took pride in his music. Some of his songs which proved very popular with the masses include Mos Mos, Leo Ni Leo, and the latest hit Boomba Train featuring Nameless, who survived the tragic accident. We may have lost such an exceptional artist, but his memory will forever live on through his music. We are hot in the block, here smoking around, yet time, yet party of our down. Now sing, let's sing to the song that we sang, everything that we did.
The people who started this, there's Eric Wainaina, there's so many people who have inspired me, Nameless, and I can, as in, when I see them succeed, it gives me the urge to go on.
Vitisho vya peni mbili, vitanifanya mimi nini?
Tonight we pay tribute to Issa as we remember the good moments he shared with us.
Issa, for those who know him well, know that he was a very fun, loving, full of life kind of guy.
he enjoyed what he did, and he enjoyed especially the appreciation that he got.
If the company you keep is any indication of your own merit, then Issa's latest rap phenomenon was destined for greatness. Issa became the toast of local Kenyan hip-hop community with the release of his debut Boomba Train, and was undoubtedly one of the greatest rapper of all time in Kenyan history, and will never be forgotten by his many friends and millions of fans all over East Africa.
I can only refer to Issa as the Kenyan Tupac.
He was exceptional in his own way.
It's a big blow.
Juggling roles as a student and as an artist, the 21-year-old Issa was responsible for some of today's hottest local hip-hop verses. However, his stardom could have been short-lived.
Mimi kusema ukweli, kutokana na dini yangu na mimi ni Muislamu, sikupendezewa na kazi Issa aliyapenda, alikuja kuanzisha music. Sipokuwa Issa alinikumbusha, baba, ulikuwa unanipeleka sehemu ya, ulijua mimi napenda music na music iko ndani ya damu yangu.
Issa's distinctive deep voice and fiery stage presence has blessed projects that include Mos Mos, Siu Sare and Leo Ni Leo. When clubs and concerts featured Issa, he always blew up the show with his lyrical tales of his life experiences and voyage into the realms of stardom and fame. He will be greatly missed by all of his fans and will remain legendary in the years to come.
Just because his body is afloat does not mean his spirit is afloat. He's still here.
The good die young. That's what they say. You know, we've lost a friend, we've lost a brother, family member, you know, in music and eternity. So I hope one day we'll meet again.
He leaves behind something which is a desire to be seen in artists, you know, the crossover appeal in terms of lyrics, in terms of the messages. If you notice, some of the songs are quite clean.
A cross-section of promoters interviewed by the showbiz crew cited the need for travel insurance cover for artists.
I'll petition also the industry. One thing which we started doing very, very carefully is looking into the whole issue of getting health insurance for our artists. You know, those kind of things. Probably even go further. You know, try and get travel insurance for some of these guys.
It's high time that we as managers and promoters think of ways of protecting them in terms of insurance and knowing that they have a future ahead of them.
Issa died in a fatal road accident along Nakuru-Nairobi Road after a successful show at a Nakuru hotel. Also in the accident was Mathenge, aka Nameless, who fractured his arm.
Anyone who knew Issa will tell you he had the greatest faith in local music.
I love Issa's music! Just before his untimely death, Issa had just released his debut album titled Nimefika and was working on a video for a track in the album, Siu Sare.
Mpaka siku hii tumefika, hakuna mtu angewahi fikiria sifa za Issa, yule kijana aliyekuwa kikaa jobless.
What happened after that was there were a lot of hangouts. A lot of hangouts. Just hangouts for hangouts' sake. Just so that we could sort of get a sense of that feeling. And a lot of those hangouts happened at Mobile, where we shot the video. And we'd just sit, and I wasn't drinking then, but we'd just sit, and people would sit and have drinks and just tell all sorts of stories about what it was like. Because we felt like there was never really any time to mourn, and this was our mourning period. A bit after that, I think the album dropped. Yeah, I can't remember for the life of me whether there was physical copies. We knew all the songs.
There was physical copies because I bought one.
No, there were physical copies. I just can't remember if they came out. I believe they came out after. So we look at this. Shout out, thank you to the families and whatever. And the Richie, I've just remembered, the album had come out. It just hadn't been launched yet. It was in circulation. There was just no official launch. So the official launch of Issa's album was a memorial concert where other artists came to perform his songs. Because there was a lot of collaborations.
Yeah.
So if he'd done
Boomba Train, for example.
If he did Boomba Train, Nameless would come out and perform his bits, and then Big Pin, for instance, would perform Issa's bits. Or Mos K-Rapt performed Issa's bits. And it was such a jovial celebration of Issa's life. It was wonderful. But I won't forget when they started playing a slideshow of his pictures from childhood. And his family was there, you know, standing, watching the stage. And then the crying began. And to be honest with you, I think that's how it is when it comes to processing our feelings around Isa. It's remembering how awesome he was and regretting the fact that that
happened
talent
so soon
was taken away so quickly.
and at such a peak.
Yeah.
Or at such a rise, still rising. In fact, he hadn't hit a peak.
No, not yet.
He still had so much.
He talked about the club he wanted to open. He talked about wanting to build up other musicians. He talked about all this new music he had coming. He was writing all the time. He was creating all the time. It was beautiful. So next Sunday, I'm back at this all over meeting, and all these questions for the past week have been crisscrossing my mind. You know, what's the definition of ministry or Christianity if it's not causing anyone any benefit other than words and images and culture and all this just patterns and just all this nonsense and just this is the culture and we just fall within it. I was thinking all these things, and I remember of all the members of Olova, only one person sent me a message to say, I'm really sorry for your loss. By next Sunday, everything was pretty much back to normal. And then this really stupid conversation started playing. Because, you know, people really took interest in his album. Actually, yes, the album was out and in circulation. A lot of people bought that album.
Yeah.
And there was a song called Hamnitishi.
Yep.
That featured Talia Uyando. And he made a reference to
Allah.
There was Allahu Akbar, Mungu ni mkubwa, but there was a line where he said, pirates paka kufa. Asingependa kukufa bila watu wangu kujua, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that line, people caught on to that line. People caught on to that line. I remember the week after, Nation FM was taking lots of tributes. I remember my sister giving one of the tributes and said, Isa was one of the most beautiful souls I knew. He always looked out for people, and I didn't get to know him that long. And we all realized, we actually didn't know Isa that long, but we felt like we were in a circle. And Isa loved Sade. And he loved Sweetest Taboo. He loved that song. And like, Isa was a stan of Sade. And he was like, we both had a love for Sade, and if you could please do me a favor and please play Sweetest Taboo, because we knew he loved this song so much. And, you know, this week was hard, it was difficult, but we're looking back. Our morning process was about just looking back on the wonderful days. So even that Sunday meeting, I probably had this the night before we had been at Mobile. So people really started focusing on this line. And in the middle of the meeting, Isa comes up, because everyone was talking about Isa. Everyone was talking about Isa for the next few weeks. That's all anyone talked about. A conversation comes up and they say, yo, you know that song? You know how the Bible says, what you confess, you possess? That guy shouldn't have put that line in there, man, because he was just calling his death. I didn't say a word. Someone next to me just said that. And I sort of was like, someone said it and a couple other people in the room seemed to be like, because that's a Christian thing to say. And that's when I made the decision I was not going to be part of this group anymore. I'm here still grieving, still mourning, and you guys start this conversation and you decide, rather than take the path of human decency, you have decided to take the path of Christian legalism and fake doctrine.
Yo.
And I was like, I think I'm done here. And then at the point when, by the next
that's
week...
not even what he means in that line. Pirates
No.
bila kufa na asingependa
kufa bila watu, bila nyinyi kujua. Yeah, that was it.
Mimi ni, you are mine and I am yours.
It was something like
yes,
that.
you get what I mean?
Yeah, like you are my people.
Mimi si mimi bila nyinyi. Yes.
Oh, you remember it?
Yeah, something like that.
So I found out that you made a tribute video.
So actually, to be honest, that's Pinye made a tribute video that played on the beat once. But Pinye has all this content that he would just leave on his computer. And for me, I'm like, content is for people to consume. So there's one time he gave me his comp, and I just went on a rampage uploading as much content as possible, just so that...
With his permission, I hope?
Without his permission.
What?
I just told him I'm
How did that turn out?
He was cool. He was cool. He understood it. Like, because I was just like, I mean, this, especially the Harmony Tishi video. And so I put it out because he made the tribute video for God Random Footage.
Yeah.
This one.
This is Issa rolling out by them. Vitisho vya peni mbili vitanifanya mimi nini?
Tishi ni babaishi maisha nayoishi haya nikubali. Tishi ni babaishi maisha nayoishi haya nikubali.
I love Issa's music.
Bila spare tire nasafiri kwenye barabara ya maisha bila kutaka, saa yoyote naweza kupata pancha, kwa hivyo naendesha gari yangu pole pole sana. Allahu Akbar, Mungu ni mkubwa. Asante Baba kwa kunisaidia kujua ukiotesha mazuri mazuri utavuna. Tangu siku yangu ya kuzaliwa mpaka siku hii tumefika, hakuna mtu angewahi fikiria sifa za Issa, yule kijana aliyekuwa kikaa jobless kona kisaga gomba, ijapokuwa amesoma angekuwa akisikizwa kwa redio, matamshi kukubaliwa na kila masikio, kucheza kuku dansa au chakacha ndio matokeo. Leo ni leo, nikilegea cha kwangu kitapepea, si mimi ni maisha ninayoishi, hamnitishi hamnibabaishi.
Hamnitishi tishi, hamnitishi tishi, hamnibabaishi, maisha nayoishi haya nikubali. Hamnitishi tishi, hamnibabaishi, maisha nayoishi haya nikubali.
Niliambiwa kidole kimoja kiwezi uwa chawa, ndege hawezi kupaa bila mabawa, bila nyinyi singefika hapa.
Because of you and me, I'm Issa.
Bila mpira utachezaje game ya kandanda? Asanteni kwa kunipa moto wa kuandika, asanteni kwa vita kunisimamia, asanteni kwa kuwika. Mtu akimshika ametushika, na hiyo ni shida. Pirates mpaka kufa, na singependa kukufa bila nyinyi kujua mimi si mimi bila nyinyi, na nyinyi ndio maisha ninayoishi, ndo sababu hawanitishi.
Hamnitishi, hamnibabaishi, maisha nayoishi haya nikubali mimi. Hamnitishi, hamnibabaishi, maisha nayoishi haya nikubali mimi.
Maisha ya Issa, maisha ya Issa, maisha ya Issa.
Issa Uncle isizo matatizo wanashuku vile mtiririko huyu ndugu mengia Nairobi na kusamba kwa miji kama Nakuru na kudhuru ubongo si uongo. Issa, this is Issa rolling out by them.
So
yeah, I mean, so that was a tribute video.
And then two weeks later.
Mugash, I've never known it, but this guy, you know, this is Issa we're talking about. He was your friend. So you just lost a friend. I mean, yes, he was this superstar, and yes, you were friends for just a small time, but you wore his shoes.
But it was genuine.
You know, it was a genuine thing. So
any conversation I had with him was from a standing point of view, like, yo, man. And the rest of the time, we would just be observing him when he was hanging out with his boys. Because him and his boys was delightful. They had so much energy, and
everyone
was wonderful.
Interviewed about Issa. I mean, Big Pin, without a doubt, it changed. It completely distorted him, and he said it in the interview. You know, made him take a break off music and all of these other things, because Issa was his affirmation. You get Issa believed. You see that thing that you're saying, Pirates. Issa believed.
No, Issa believed in that crew.
You know, and he was like, guys, we're the crew, and it's not about me; it's about us. So, and he doesn't. Of course, he's also this superstar. And you've come up. So I didn't know that it affected you to the point. I always wondered I didn't know it affected you to the point where you exited
this ministry that I'd been part of for so long and that I really believed in. I think just barely a year before I was like, all over for life.
So
but hearing that conversation,
how soon did you leave after that conversation?
There was that conversation, and then 2 weeks later, I mean, I was still thinking about it, but then 2 weeks later, another conversation came up, and then again, everyone was in this legalistic phase, and they were like, yeah, there's some stuff that him and that crew used to do that was really dumb. And I'm like, and now that sealed it. And then that's when I probably expressed my desire to leave the week after. So 2 weeks after. It was, 2 weeks. 2 weeks had passed at the point I said, I'm out, thanks.
Okay.
And this is not, this is completely coincidental, I think. But about 2 weeks after I said I'm done, 2 or 3 weeks, all over wound up.
It did, eh?
Yeah. So I think 5 weeks, 6 weeks after Isa's passing, all over was no more.
Yo, I always try to look at things from a positive perspective. I mean, that conversation has no positive perspective in it. But what I mean is the movement the movement that was all over had such a positive impact on this country.
It did.
You get. I'm glad that you're part of it. We can't again also, you can never talk about the Kenyan music industry without mentioning Isa. Name a person I've interviewed, his name has come up.
Yeah.
And his name always comes up from the perspective of, and then there was, as guys were doing this, even if it's a gospel guys, as guys were doing this, and then this Ogopa movement came up, and he put Kenya on the map.
Yeah, and he became the center of it all.
Exactly.
Holding everything together.
So for me, I always try to look at things from that positive perspective. But hearing your story will make me check myself for my legalese as well. Or I hope it makes Christians check themselves on just understanding how we communicate with people.
I think Christians need to learn to be human again. That still isn't happening. That the exodus I made from ministry and from all over at that point was happening. I was almost done.
How old are you at this time?
I was almost done. Like I was senior year, 4th year in campus. I was 23. Yeah, by this point, Mr. USA had passed, all that. I was now, it's like life needs to go on now. All over isn't going to be here forever. I need to now really concentrate on life. And by the time Olovo was winding up, it caught a lot of people by surprise.
What year is this?
2003.
Oh, 2003.
2002. No, hold on.
2003, because Isa died in 2003.
I was pretty close to finishing my studies, and we realized this thing that we thought was going to be part of our lives for a long time was suddenly done. So I really now started concentrating on my studies again.
What were you studying?
In USIU, I was studying IT. I have a Bachelor of Science in Information Systems and Technology
oh,
from USIU. Wow, can you imagine? But that was almost coming to an end, and I looked back, and I think it caused me to question everything. Even down to the, hey, listen, you went to a pretty good university. You had all these youthful years, all this time to do this cool stuff, and you'd married yourself to this, thinking that this was it, that this was the future. But now it's nothing. It's gone. There's nothing. And there was no exit system. There was no let's exit slowly. There was no what do we do next. It was just here today, gone tomorrow. You asked me a question earlier about whether there's people in the group that ended up going and making an impact in entertainment. And the question obviously would arise as to why is it that people who are involved in a ministry that touched so many parts of the entertainment scene in Nairobi as it was then, didn't actually end up shaping the entertainment scene afterwards. And it's because the thing that we're setting out to do didn't happen. And it ended in the most unexpected and orthodox way. It was just suddenly done, and I need to deal with my shit. You deal with your shit, and everyone goes off and deals with their shit on their own. And that's no way to end something that a few dozen people believed in so strongly and so deeply. And I think that's why, because the association between the experience of being in Olova, seeing Olova come to an end the way it did. Yeah, people would ask, why did Olova come to an end? And it's funny that the question is answered in pretty much the same way that I answered when I was asked, why did you run for Mr. and Miss CSIU? And the answer was because God said it was time. That's it. And that USIU, the victory, the Mr. USIU, the victory affirmed that. I was like, God said I should do it because I was going to win. And I did, and that's amazing. But God said Olova needs to end. What do I have left from that? Olova ends so that, and suddenly we had to catch up with real life. We were like people who were institutionalized within ministry, who had to now start interacting with real life. So I finished studies, and then I'd done an extra minor in marketing, and then I decided I was going to look for an internship at an ad agency. And advertising is what I always wanted to do. The whole ministry and dance thing had come to an end. And I said I was going to do two things. One, find a job in advertising, and two, finally start chasing this dream of being an actor, which I had put on ice because I was too busy serving the Lord.
Okay, let's end right there. We'll be back. Let yourself get some energy, man. Hey, that story, honey. Okay, anyway, we'll be back.
I'm not told that story.
I get it.
Never told that story.
I get it.
Ever.